where to start filming,
So-
terrific.
Right, my name is Robert Mitchell. All my friends call me Bob. I was born in South Shields in 1940, November 1940. I am now 82 tomorrow. And my dad he didn't serve during the war. He was a ship's plater, and he worked repairing ships at Redhead's dockyard in South Shields, a reserved occupation. And he worked long hours. There was lots of money, loads of work. But come 1946, there was no ships to repair. He was on the dole for 18 months, and he got to know about a job here at Newton Chambers in his trade as a plater in the boiler shop at Thorncliffe. So we came down here, I think, about 1947. It could have been a bit later, but because I don't remember any of that winter. It was a very, very bad winter, 47. So, and the reason, another reason was that there was a house that came with the job on Thorncliffe Road, which was just across the back here. Thorncliffe Avenue, sorry, that's a proper title. And the rent was 19 shillings a week. So we moved down here. There was no electricity in the house when we moved down, which my grandkids just cannot believe, you know, computers, etc. But we eventually did get electric installed, and it was a bit dire. There was no money. There was no bathroom, there was an outside toilet. It wasn't very pleasant. I mean, one time I went to school at Warren on the way to Barnsley, and they did a school trip to Fountains Abbey. I'd be about 10, and I asked my dad. It was 10 shillings, the cost of the trip, and he said, yeah, because my dad, he didn't have any time for us, you know, as children, and I had to, and it was working nights, and the day of the trip I went up and I said, I've got to have that money, Dad, I want to go on that trip. And he borrowed it off his friend that very day. So that's the sort of life. And then later on, I went to the Ecclesfield Grammar School, passed my 11 plus, and where are we now? So me and the headmaster at Ecclesfield Grammar School didn't get on very well. And he had me in the office one day and he said, Mitchell, one of us is going to leave. And obviously it wasn't him. So I went to I'd be about 15, and I went. Newton Chambers then ran a huge apprenticeship training scheme for both boys and girls. And I had the interview, and Mr. Dugan, who ran it at the time, said, I'm sorry, Robert, but being as you departed the grammar school under the circumstances, we cannot offer you an apprenticeship. So I went naturally to the next place where everybody got a job, which was Thorpe Colliery for the NCB. And I did a spell there sorting coal out, chucking lumps of stone out of the coal. And then after 6 months, you go to Barnsley main colliery to do your underground training, which I did. And then I started underground on the haulage, coal haulage, which it was a job. And then one day I said to the deputy, Arthur, what was those guys that go out at pit early? Because at end of shift we had to go and wait to be taken up to the surface, and it was cold because it was a downdraft system. So he says, oh, they're fitters and electricians. So I went to see the training officer, Arthur, and I said, Arthur, can I have an apprenticeship? He says, of course you can, lad. So I started going to Barnsley Tech, 1 day a week, day release, and I left the coal industry when I was 23, because at that time I was 6'3", 16 stone, and the area I worked in was about as high as this table, and sometimes very rough conditions. And there was sort of a camaraderie amongst miners, but there was also the other side of it where you got tormented and taken advantage of, you know. So at 23, I'd lost my mother. My mother died when I was 21. I thought, this isn't for me. So I left. And I went to work locally. Then you could get a job anywhere, especially with the trade, you know. And I worked for a while at a little place in Sheffield. Anyway, I did several jobs. I went to London to seek my fortune. I worked on the Jubilee line when that was being dug. Didn't last very long down there. And then when I came back, I got a job at Newton Chambers. Funny enough, back in the fitting shop where I wanted to be in the first place. So I was working in the fitting shop itself, and a guy at that time, Newton Chambers were building excavators. Newton Chambers Coring, an American firm, Coring, and they got to know a firm in Ipswich was doing excavators as well. So Newton's bought them out, Ransom and Rapier, but unbeknown to most everyone at Newton's, Ransom and Rapier's had £1 million worth of overseas water control contracts. So this guy, one night the foreman said, we want you to come back to work and you'll get paid overtime. There's a guy coming from Ransom and Rapier's to talk about the job he's just done in India. So this guy, Ron Gascoigne, came and did a slideshow, and then the foreman said, we want someone to go to Nigeria with Ron. Well, all the guys, young married men. I was the only single bloke. I said, I'll go. I hadn't a clue. I didn't know what the money would be, what the conditions were. Anyway, long story short, I finished up in Ibadan in Nigeria, where we had a contract out in the bush to provide the locals with fresh water, which they wouldn't use, you know. All right, it wasn't like we have here on tap in every house. They had standpipes, and they would go on, and the younger generation might start to use it, but the old ones still went to the river. So I was there for about 6 months, and we got another contract in Nairobi in East Africa, a huge hydroelectric scheme on the Tana River. So we were due to fly across from Nigeria to Kenya, but the civil side wasn't ready for us. So I came home, and in which time, fortunately, my dad died while I was here, which was fortunate or unfortunate. So we flew out VC10 to Nairobi, and then it was 100 mile up into the bush, where to Ibadan, which is a university town, and then it was a further 50 mile up to the site. So it was an experience, to put it lightly. I mean, I lost 4 stone in weight because we used to come up from site at lunchtime, and she was an Italian, the woman that got to cook, and she'd have beef stew and stuff like that, and that, you know, just couldn't eat it. And then, oh, it was an experience, that. I mean, we had a guy, a little Kenyan, and he could obviously speak English, and we made him foreman. And then, after he worked for us a fortnight, he said to me, "You can go home now, Mr. Mitchell. I can do your job." Because they hadn't had independence all that long, you know, and they were very, very touchy. And I can't repeat what I told him. So my gaffer, he says, "Bob, you've got to stop swearing at these locals." He says, they'll have you deported, you know. Anyway, the job was winding up. Massive job. There was guys from Lebanon, welders came from Lebanon. There was a lot of guys from Scotland, from the shipyards in Scotland, because they made these huge pipes that took the water down to the turbines. And me stopped the Tana River, the largest river in Africa, and I pressed a button and I stopped it. 3 massive sluice gates that came up and down. So we had a job. No, I'll not go into that bit, but the job was coming to an end, and I said, "Ron, I'm going home. I've had enough." 80 degrees, you know. Oh, and I had to do a lot of the work myself, because you could show them so much. But anyway, I came home, and then I did a lot of work at power stations, sluice gates again, for Newtons. I worked on the River Mersey, because the Mersey is tidal, and they only wanted the top 2 foot of fresh water. So these gates I put in followed the tide up and down. I worked at Dungeness in Kent on the nuclear station there, and that's when I met my wife. I was down there on my own, worked 6 days a week. Sunday was a problem, you know, too far to come home. I used to go up to Lydd Airport on a Sunday morning. A nice young girl there used to cook me breakfast for me. And I actually went up once in a, now they get it right, little biplane for a trip round a flight round the power station. Yeah, and then I came back, and I think it was when I was at Dungeness. Just going to have a drink.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
And then I think we parted company then. It'd be about, well, it'd be 64 when I started, and it'd be about 68 when I finished. And then I got a job locally, a little place in Chapeltown that did railway equipment, and I hated it. I didn't like it. You see, I'm a travelling guy. Fortunately, I've been to a lot of places worldwide. Went to America, Australia, New Zealand. I've actually landed in India, Pakistan. That was interesting. And then I started contracting. It was agency work really, because you could get a job anywhere. You know, mechanical fitter. And the last big job I did was at Aldwark in Rotherham, at the steelworks, and we put a 5-strand continuous casting rig made by Danieli in Italy to replace the single one that was there. Ripped the single one out while we were putting the new one in, and that was when I was 64. And after that I was working for a guy in Brighouse on a self-employed basis, and I said to him, you know, if you've nothing for me next week, I'll have it off, you know, because I'm a very, very petrol head type bloke. I was, well, since I was 30, into restoring cars. So when I was sort of 64, I semi-retired, and then we could retire at 65. And I got a few decent pensions, and I got a little premises, or shared a premises, to do my restorations. But as I got to be older, I couldn't do the full-size ones. So now I restore children's pedal cars for a hobby, and that keeps me busy, and that brings us up to date.
That's brilliant. So I think when you were working at Newton Chambers then, what was the area like? What were some of your places, nice places to go? What were some of the things you'd do in the area?
Well, at that time, there was the Eisel factory, where they made the notorious toilet paper. It might as well have been cardboard. It was medicated, and believe me, newsprint was preferable. But they employed a lot of the women in the area, and the factory where they made the chemicals is still going. In fact, they've just spent 12 million quid to extend it, just up the road here. And as I say, 3,500 people worked at Newton Chambers. There weren't massive pairs, but it was steady. You had a job for life at Newton's. As I say, I worked there. My mother worked in the light casting side of the foundry, where they made fireplaces, cast iron fireplaces, and she did the moulds for them. My sister worked in the head office, telephonist. My brother worked in the foundry, crane driving. My dad left the boiler shop and he went to work in the foundry, and that's where he finally finished his time. He retired at 65, but he only lived a year after and died at 66. But yeah, I mean, it was a nice area to live in. They had decent dancers at the Newton Hall on a Saturday night. In fact, when I was a Boy Scout, I got the job of operating the lights on a Saturday night dance, and I used to dim the hall lights and put the spotlights on the band, and then after the dance I used to put the lights back on, with which I used to get half a crown and my supper. So yeah, and there was a snooker hall, which I used to frequent too often, especially when I was at school. Just have my dinner and then we'd wag off and go play at snooker in the afternoon, nearly every day. that's why Mr. Harrison and I had words. But yes, um, I can't think of anything else really. I used to like to go to the Thorncliffe Cricket and Social Club. It's shut down now, but apparently going to reopen shortly. I'd been a member there for 65 years. Although I'm not a cricket fan, I just like the atmosphere in the club. But as I say, COVID brought the death knell for that place, as it did to a lot of pubs. So yeah, that's about it.
So how did you feel when Newton Chambers stopped operating?
Well, as I say, I was gainfully employed elsewhere, so it didn't really matter to me. My dad had retired, my mother had died, my sister had married and moved away. So it was perhaps a little sad because there'd been such a massive firm, so many strings to the bow, you know, like gas holders and fireplaces and all sorts. The excavators, and it was as traumatic, really, work-wise, as when Maggie Thatcher closed all the pits. You know, I mean, as I said, 3,500 people, and they all lost their jobs, and it went quite quickly as well. Yeah.
And so, a lot of what we're covering is about the Chapeltown area, but there's also the other areas that were affected nearby as well. So, do you have any? Did you ever go out into the other local areas? Did you ever, go see what was happening in, like, say, Hoyland down the road or anywhere like that?
I had some friends from school who lived in Hoyland, who I used to knock about with at one bit. But no, we were, as I say, very localised, if you like. There wasn't. The one thing that the coal board did for me, when I was about 17, they took us on a week's holiday to Scarborough, to the miners' convalescent home in Scorby Mills in Scarborough, on the premise that the couple that took us insisted we peel all the potatoes before we went out. Says, you can go off, do what you want, but you've got to peel the potatoes first. So yeah, that was a good thing. I was, as I say, I was into. I had motorbikes, like everybody did, or cheap form of transport. Nobody could afford a car. I mean, when we lived on Thorncliffe Avenue, there was the butcher who used to come round. He had a little Ford van. The milk was delivered by horse and cart, and the Fletcher's bread van, and that was it. Oh, and perhaps if the doctor came. So there's very little transport. Yeah, I enjoy my motorcycle, but I get there again. I had several friends killed. One lad lost his leg in a motorbike accident. So odd times, yeah.
Did you ever have any accidents motorbiking?
I came off a couple of times, but nothing. Oh, I did have one. I was going to work one Saturday morning at about 6 o'clock, and there was a guy coming from the pit who'd been on nights, driving an A35. And at the crossroads in Thorpe, he was going to turn right and I was going straight ahead, and we met in the middle, and I flew over the top of this A35 and landed and I broke a bone in the back of my hand, that's all. Did quite a lot of damage to the bike. But I went to work, I stopped for the shift. Yeah, we were both in the same insurance company, so there was no point in claiming. But yeah, that was the most serious thing I had on a bike.
Now you mentioned the E35 there. Did you ever have a favourite motorbike of yours?
Well, initially, anything that would start. But I did finish up with a nice bike, a BSA 500cc Shooting Star. Nice bike. In fact, I had a bike. I had the Shooting Star, and I had an old Austin at the time, a 10 horsepower, about a 47 Austin, which I bought for 30 quid from a guy at High Green. But then I gave that away, and then I had I fancied a Mark II Jaguar, preferably a 3.4, but anyway, I finished up with the 2.4, and that was the best car in Chapeltown really at the time, and I abused it because we were working at a cement works in Leek in Staffordshire, and we didn't bother to get changed. Well, the cement and the leather don't mix, and all the tackle went in the boot, you know. And I sold that car. It had a bad oil leak, and we were working at Barry, Aberthaw Power Station, and when I was due to go to Nigeria, and I sold it to the local lads for I think 100 quid, which just about paid the HP off on it. So that was a nice car. I mean, I would like to have one of them again, but yeah. And the first old car I really had was a 1930 Morris flat nose Cowley, which I bought in Sheffield. I ran that for a while, but I never kept the cars. I always hankered for something better and different. I had Triumph Roadsters, loads and loads of different cars. And then I got to know about the firm at Grenoside, Hemingways. They were into ex-army stuff and testing cars and stuff. And I took my modern car for a test there one day, and the tester guy said, well, Bob, why don't you have a look at that old car down in Barn? And it was a 1930 Chevrolet Open Tourer, which the Hemingways had bought but never done anything with. And I was about 70 at the time. And I thought, I'm going to have that. I fancied that. And we did a deal. I paid, I asked how much? 5.5 grand. But when I went to buy it, he said, no, I want 6, which I said, fair enough. And I had that for about 4 years. Lovely old car, lovely old car. I mean, it let me down a couple of times, but as they always do, you know. And then I got, as I say, I was about 74, and I thought, the car's running well. I can't really do the maintenance myself now, and I can't afford to pay anybody £80 an hour to do the maintenance for me. So I took it to an auction down at Bicester. And the guy came from the auction place and took some photos, and he said, how much do you think it's worth? And I said, well, 10 to 12. He says, no, you'll not get that much. He says, perhaps 6 to 8. I says, go on then. And I watched the auction on my laptop, and it got to 4,500 and stopped. So I rang the guy later and he said, look, I can probably get you a bit more. Well, it had cost me £180 to have it taken down there. So I thought, I'm not paying £180 to fetch it back. So I sold it. And then I bought the one that's in the garage now, which is a 61 Austin Cambridge. Gentleman's carriage. It drives beautifully. I don't go very far in it, but and as I say, I buy pedal cars off eBay that want restoring because I do the welding, I do the spraying, and then I put them back on. Most times I only get what I pay for them, but it keeps me busy.
Now you mentioned there about some of the places, Barry, Leek for example, and I know earlier you mentioned that you were quite the travelling man. Now this might be hard to choose, but has there ever been a favourite or some of the favourite places you've ever visited?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, when we were in Nairobi, one Easter, there was, I'll say, about 20 European guys. One or two had their wives with them on the big camp on the outskirts of the construction site. And they said, we're going to Mombasa for the holiday. Would you like to come? And I said, oh yeah, sure. And at that time, it was about, I would say, 400 miles from where we were to Mombasa. But only half of it was tarmacked, the rest was dirt road. So I always remember that beach and I had I bought myself a cine camera before I went to Kenya to film the wildlife, you know, and that beach, it was fantastic, white sand, and a really good weekend down at Mombasa. So yeah, that would be. And apart from that, I went to Cuba on my own. My wife didn't want to go, and then we landed down near Guantanamo Bay in the south, and you could swim in the Caribbean and I forget the other one, but swim two different oceans at once. That was nice. Swam with the dolphins, as you do, and then we travelled by coach up to Havana. Now, north of Havana, Varadero, which is the touristy bit. Nobody wants to go there. It's much better down in the south. You pulled up and the kids had come running and offered them sweets. Oh no, we won't want sweets. We want flip-flops. Because we're running around bare feet. Yeah. So that Cuba, very nice. I'd like to go back, but I couldn't put up with the airport hassle now, you know. Now. So yeah, between Kenya and Cuba. I mean, I went to China to see the Terracotta Army and the Great Wall, as you do. Yeah, I mean, I said to my wife, I'll take you to Mombasa. She says, I don't want to go there. She's not a favourite of our coloured friends, I'm afraid. She's quite, well, she's got her own opinions, put it that way. She's 82, generally, you know, had a hard life. Well, initially, as childhood. Yeah. Family of 9, she comes from. Yeah. Case of who gets up first gets the best dress. Yeah.
So, on that note, actually, again, you mentioned kids earlier. Do you have kids of your own then?
Yes. When I met my wife, she was divorced, working at a nightclub in Sheffield, the Penny Farthing, and I was a gay guy about town, you know, got a bit of money, a nice car. I asked her for a date. a very, very attractive lady. And then I found out she'd got 2 children. So I thought, well, my dad had taken, when he married my mother had 2 sons from her first marriage. Because she emigrated to Canada when she was 16, my mother, you know. I mean, can you imagine? Pre-1920, a girl on her own going to Canada. Anyway, she met this guy in Canada, and he'd been injured in the First World War, gassed. And they didn't give him long to live, but my mother kept him alive for 7 years, and he died. In fact, I looked at the death certificate this morning. Kidney failure from the gas. So she was in Canada on her own with 2 kids, came over here to his relations in South Shields and met my dad. Now, my dad took these 2, but they didn't get on, you know, which is, I'll come to it eventually. So my half-brother, Ken, he joined the army and he got killed in Korea. My other brother, Gordon, he joined the Navy as a boy because they wanted to get away from my dad. They didn't get on, you know. And unfortunately, he got killed in a boat accident in a year after my brother got killed in Korea. I mean, it almost killed my mother to lose 2 lads like that. Anyway, I thought, when I met Val, she'd got 2 kids. I thought, I can make a better job of bringing 2 kids up than my father ever did. So we got married, and I have then we had a daughter. And yeah, so at the time, Val was living in a rented place at the bottom of the moor in Sheffield. And I'd always got designs on having my own house. And we came to see a friend of mine who lived across the road. And they were just building these houses. So I put my name down. I had the choice of all 10. I looked at the bottom one and I thought, no, I'll have the top one. It's more secluded. £3,600, this house. And when we came here, the mortgage was £36 a month, which we struggled to pay. We didn't have any carpet on the stairs, carpet in the room. But Val was very good at the economics, kept a list of everything, outgoings, and dread when the ice cream man came, because couldn't buy the kids an ice cream. But yeah, so my eldest stepdaughter lives in Knaresborough now. My stepson lives locally at Warren, and my own daughter lives at Elsecar. No, Oil and Common.
So do you go and visit them regularly, or?
Well, we don't go up to Knaresborough very often. We have been occasionally. I've been to. I don't go to see my stepson. He comes here to see his mum quite often. But I go regularly to my daughters. You know I said initially that I'd do a better job than my dad did, but it's difficult when, they didn't really get on with me, but I tried my best with them, and we survived. But I mean, my daughter, my stepdaughter had 3 boys when she got married. I had 3 boys. My stepson didn't get married. He's a bachelor, but my daughter had a son, and the difference was that I was with my daughter when Brad was born. Not at the point yet, but I was there in the same. I saw him come out, and that was a bond that we forged from there on in, because his dad was a mongrel. He buggered off. So I brought him up. I was his granddad and I was his dad. I took him everywhere. I took him to car rallies, and one of his favourite things was he used to go round the back and look. Oh, Grandad, that's a fast car. It's got 4 exhaust pipes. I took him to the railway at Elsecar, and I knew the guy that was driving the loco, and he said, come up on footplate. So I took Brad up on footplate, and he's looking. It'd be about 6 or 7, and he says, Grandad, what's them stones there? I says, oh, that's coal for fire. That's what makes it go. I mean, what kids today, they've never seen a coal fire unless you go in a pub, you know. And oh yeah, and now, I mean, he's shown an interest in music, so especially drumming. I bought him his first drum kit, and he now plays professionally in a tribute group called Queen 2, and they're quite successful. There's loads of travelling, you know, like Scotland one day and down in Kent the next, but he loves it, he loves it. In fact, they were in Meadow Hall on Saturday with a group, Lena and the Lions, playing at HMV shop. So we get on like a house on fire. I love him to bits. If they were said to me, Brad is seriously ill and you need to cut your leg off to save his life, I'd say, pass me the saw. That's the bond that we have.
It's fantastic to hear, and especially knowing that, from my perspective as well, I had a great relationship with my granddad. I mean, he's still here, but as in, like, you know, he took me places, and we also formed that bond as well, so I can empathise with that. I think, actually, it's really interesting that you mentioned there about the locomotive Elsecar Railway. What was some of your memories of Elsecar, and maybe even some memories of the railway, if you have any?
Well, when I was about 10, they used to transport manufactured goods from the Isle factory on a railway that ran along the cart road with a little saddle tank engine. And up in the yard, they had steam cranes as well, which, you know, they had to be fired up at least half an hour before they could work. And I always remember coming from school in an afternoon and trying to race on foot the steam engine going up into the Thorncliffe works. Yeah.
Did you ever win?
No, much too fast. Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, there was a lot of steam involved up in Thorncliffe. Yeah, because as I said, they had the steam cranes, and I mean, they used to make the cupolas for the steel in the boiler shop, you know. All sorts. And another thing about Newton is certainly pre-war, nearly every city and town had a Newton Chambers gas holder made at Thorncliffe. That's I said earlier, when Charlie Stutchbury went to Russia. I mean, imagine what an experience that must have been. That was pre-war. Yeah.
So do you often go into Elsecar nowadays, or?
I do, I do. I was there recently at a toy sale, an evening toy sale. Um, I used to have a large collection of toys, model cars and stuff, obviously. But I don't. I sort of downsized a bit. My wife's never been fond of them. She's never been fond of the cars either, to be honest. Yeah. So yeah.
So you said earlier about the pedal bikes, the children's, the pedal vehicles. Have you got any projects ongoing right now with that?
Oh God, yeah. I've got a garage full. Yeah. I've recently done that a Russian pedal car made at the Muscovitz factory where they make the full-size cars. I've just done a little fire engine, and I bought off eBay from China a little bell to mount on the fire engine, and I've put some flashing lights on, and that I've got 3 for sale on eBay at the moment. That's where my grandson comes in. He does all the techie work. I mean, I know how to switch it on, but that's about it.
Well, I think actually that's quite interesting that you spent a lot of time, that you spend and have the great bond with Brad. So when you were growing up, did you have a similar or a close bond with your parents or with your grandparents?
I didn't have any grandparents. I vaguely remember my dad's mother, because as I say, he worked at the shipyard during the war, and between where his mother lived halfway between where we lived and the shipyard. So I remember I must have been only about 5, taking him an egg for his tea. So he used to come to his mum's for his tea rather than come all the way home. And it cut the top off his egg, and it said, "Here you are, Bob." Like gold. Top off an egg. But no, I formed a friendship with a lad at school. We went to Warren School together. Now his dad was production manager at Firth Vickers in Sheffield. Really responsible job. He was involved in making the £1,000 bomb, it's Lancasters, and they lived in a little house on Commerce Street. There again, no electric. And his dad had a very well-paid job, and he bought Brian throughout the war any dinky toy that came out. He got, and he had a battery-powered Hornby 00 train set. Now that was the beast. That was the basis of our friendship. Yeah, his dad. He was his own man. His wife was terrified of him, you know. They had a telephone, the only one on the street, and if someone could, in an emergency, Mrs. Wainwright, do you think we could use the phone? Oh, I don't know. Can you come back when Ron's not in? No, but Brian, he was a little bit effeminate, whereas I was a proper tomboy type, and his dad took to me, and he was my mentor, because he started work as a draftsman, and I thought I want to be a draftsman, but then when I tried, I thought no. I still enjoyed the engineering part, and he used to take us down to the foundry on a Saturday morning, me and Brian, and we were very good friends, and he we lost touch. He lives locally, but he's a bit of a hermit now. I'm afraid it is a bit odd. But yeah, Ron Wainwright was a very big influence on my life. I mean, I'd go down from school, and poor Mrs. Wainwright, she'd say, are you going home for your tea, Bobby? No. And I'd come home about 9 o'clock at night, and I'd been there, you know. She was a lousy cook, but so was my mother. Oh, and then he bought a Riley Merlin pre-war, and I remember being taken out in that because he had a daughter as well, Janet. There'd been me, Janet, and Brian on the back seat with a blanket on over us because there was no heating in it, and we just used to go for a run out, go to Wortley and back in this Riley. Oh yeah. But a big influence.
Do you think that might have influenced your love of cars, maybe, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was always interested in making things work. I remember finding when I was a kid, I might be been about 7 or 8, the remnants of a wind-up Hornby 00. And I took it home, and from somewhere I got some oil, whether my dad fetched it. But it turned out that it had been overwound. And when I got it going, I thought, that's magnificent. That's what I want to do. Yeah. I say I've always been engineering orientated. I couldn't. When I started at Coal Board, I was going to go into the mining side, but I soon realised that wasn't for me.
I think, as touched upon earlier about, like you say, this going out into the community and experiencing some of the. Just before we. History kind of moving forward, if that's okay.
Well, I mean, things are changing that rapidly. I mean, I really fear, such as my grandson, the influx of refugees, if you like to call them, the majority of them economic refugees, and that's something I don't like to see. Why won't they allow them to work? Because in '56, when Hungarian uprising, a lot of Hungarians came to Barnsley, and I was going to the technical college at the time, and they learnt English, and they all went to work for the Coal Board. They went to work. All right. The local lasses fell for them in big style. Don't know why, but anyway. But I mean, we've got Afghans and all sorts living up here at Stainrock Lodge. It's costing millions. All right. But as I say, Albanians, there's more people here than there is in Albania. You don't tell them there's no war in Albania, but there's plenty of druggy Albanians in this country. And I know you want, not talking internationally, but locally. I just fear for what's going to happen in the future, and that at 82 that I won't be here to see it.
I think that brings us on to a point about what will be preserved for the future then. So a lot of the stories, such as yourselves, are sad to say disappearing, and a lot of the history around here is no longer here, or it's changed, so it's no longer visible, so people can't see it. So how would you like to see the history, the heritage of this area? How would you like to see it preserved for the future? How would you like to see the history really be saved for future generations?
Well, I think it should start at school level. I don't think. I mean, I remember when we were at grammar school, they took us across the road, and they were outcropping for the coal in those fields at Ecclesfield, looking for fossils, you know, and school trips. I don't know whether they still do them. I mean, that formed a lot of my interest, activities at school. When I left school, I joined the Air Training Corps. I don't know how well publicised that is now, but we had a fantastic time. We did CND, you know, when the nuclear threat, and we went as casualties for the public services, fire brigade, and to come and rescue us, dressed up and bandaged and things like that, you know, and none of that happens now, you know. Not that I want the nuclear threat to come back, but yeah, I think you see, another thing. It's media, cell phones. I mean, like I said, I could remember no electric in the house. It's changed that vastly, and I think that has a lot to do with the future.
In fact, that's a really good point, and often an overlooked part of British history, because the media itself is also, it's infiltrated our lives here, there, and everywhere. But it got me thinking actually about life in Britain during the Cold War there. So living under that nuclear threat, having these sort of, what kind of experiences do you remember? How did you feel living in Britain during the Cold War?
I can go back a bit further to start with. During the Second World War, we in South Shields we got bombed quite heavily. Although I never remember the bangs, I remember being hungry all the time, you know, rationing and stuff. But it was so. Like the Cuban crisis, obviously we were worried, but you just got on with life, you know. You couldn't worry about it too much, otherwise you'd never go out or do anything. So I'm glad that that it's not past, but the threat's still there, and look what's happened recently with Putin. I mean, why ever anybody hadn't shot him, God knows why, you know, because he deserves it for what he's done in Ukraine and throughout the world. So sort of divorced a bit from reality, really, if you like, a bit selfish. But I think, you know, I've contributed, and that's what all I can say.
That's actually a really interesting thing that you said. You don't remember the bangs, but you remember the hunger. So, to the best of your memory, what was South Shields like during the Second World War?
Well, when I up to being about 5, we lived in a terraced house in South Shields at Taylor Street, and one of my most vivid memories, coal fire and a pegged rug, you know, homemade rug in front of the fire. And in the morning when you got up and switched the light on, the cockroaches that were in this carpet used to run back into the fire. And because of that, in about, what would it be, 46 perhaps, just immediately after the war, we got a brand new council house. And it was near the coast at Marsden, at Horsley Hill. And my mother used to cook up beef mince and raw potatoes, and we'd go to the beach at Marsden Bay as kids and play all day on them. And that food, potatoes cooked in salt water, I made a little fire, cooked the potatoes, warmed the mince up, absolute manna, beautiful. And that beach, I still go back. I love the place. There's a flight of steps down. There's also a lift operating now to a cafe at the bottom, which was derelict when I was a kid. So, I mean, playing cricket and you know, the kids, can we play? And say, yes. Where have you come? Oh, we live here, you know. Amazing place. Yeah. But the very happy memories of South Shields. I didn't like it in South Yorkshire when I first came here. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, was there any reason why you didn't like it when you came?
Language for a start. I might as well have been speaking Martian with a strong Geordie accent, and I didn't know what spice were or roaring, and the language I soon changed. You know, you've got to what's the word, mingle. Yeah, I was an oddity, which you know you can't be when you're a kid. And as I say, money was a big thing. Not that we had any more money up in South Shields than we did down here, but yeah, very very happy times up in South Shields. And I should have really. Don't keep in touch, but I have a lot of relatives up there. My dad's family are still up in South Shields. When my brother got married, he married a girl from Morpeth, and he had 4 daughters. And when he got remarried, all 4 daughters were there, grown up with the families. We've never kept in touch.
That could be is that something you think you want to?
No, not now. It's too far in the past.
I think before moving on to the last one or two questions, when you mentioned you didn't hear the bangs, did you ever experience or see any of the damage, or did you ever know someone who was affected by the damage of war?
Yeah, in Sheffield particularly. The bomb damage, when the trams were running, the trams used to run up to Sheffield Lane Top, which I used frequently, because you could run and jump on, you see. There was a lot of damage in Sheffield. Not so much round here, although apparently the Germans did have detailed plans of all, especially the tank factory, where they made the tanks. I can't remember the name, but I don't think that there was ever much this way. I remember the anti-aircraft guns up behind the grammar school that used to fire over Sheffield. Yeah. And there was a camp. I don't remember the camp up at Burn Cross, but apparently there was a lot of Italian prisoners of war up there, which would they'd probably gone by the time we moved down here. And I can't remember any damage up in South Shields, although the little town hall place in the middle of the market took a direct hit, and there were a lot of people killed. The bomb actually went down into the entrance, and everybody was killed there. And the last time I was there, they were restoring it. It's like a Grade 2 listed building. Yeah, so obviously it didn't flatten it. Yeah.
But I think before we move on to the final question, actually going back a bit to what you said about when they used to put bandages on you as like the dummy run almost. What was the purpose of that? Was that an official thing that happened, like, you know, as a subject? Like, did that happen in schools? Did that happen just as? Do you know when they said that you put like bandages on you to show you as?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was when I was in the Air Cadets, and it was an exercise that involved all the public police, fire, ambulance service, and it was held at the abandoned glassworks in Barnsley, which at that time resembled a bomb site. And obviously some played dead, some had facial injuries, and then we got fed, which was the whole purpose of going. Yeah, anything for a sawney. But there again in the Air Cadets, a fond memory. I played drums in the Air Cadet band, marching through the middle of Barnsley on Battle of Britain Day with the bugles playing, me on the drums, the crowd all cheering, marching up Racecommon Road. Fantastic. And a better thing still, in the Air Cadets you got a free uniform, whereas in the Boy Scouts you had to buy your own. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and turning left up towards the headquarters, and I lost a drumstick, and I broke ranks and went and picked it up. And when we got back in the yard, the flight said, "What the hell did you do that for? You could have gone back afterwards." But as a kid, you see, yeah, I used to enjoy it. Go to bed, and we used to go back on a Wednesday night, and once time we used to do drill parades, drill competitions, just some kids to do. And we were practicing this time in Barnsley, just round the corner from the headquarters. And the window opened, and it'd be about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and this guy says, "Will you off? I'm trying to get some sleep." And we're there, like, bam, 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 in front of his window. But it was a laugh, really. I mean, on the competitions, they give you an order. Some are good that way, some are good that way. Absolute chaos. Yeah, great fun though, great fun. And we went to Lindholm once. Well, we used to go quite regularly. And we went up in an Anson, a twin engine plane, and 6 of us, and the pilot on that side, and he said, "Right, sit in the co-pilot seat, put your feet on the rudders, yeah, hold it, right, it's yours." Talk about a white knuckle ride. He says, "Press a little on the left rudder," and it went, and then straighten up. He said, and look at the level indicator and out the window at the same time. And that at 14, fantastic, all free. Yeah.
Now this is almost like a personal question, because I'm really enjoying listening to it. It's absolutely amazing. Is this enjoyable? Like this walk down memory lane for you?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, you can't talk to grandkids about it. They just don't want to know. You know, they're so wrapped up in their own lives. Perhaps before COVID, I used to go to the British Legion in Chapeltown. Although I'm not ex-service, they do have non-ex-service members, and chat to the old guys there, do a bit of reminiscing there. There's one guy, Derek Bradbury. He has a big haulage concern now in Ecclesfield, and he and I served time at the at Birdwell Central Workshops. You know, he was in the garage, and I was doing my apprenticeship, and we remained friends ever since. Me and Derek. Yeah.
Fantastic. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of this speaks to a lot of what we want to do, which is preserve these stories, preserve this heritage, and like you say with the grandkids, they obviously have a lot going on in their lives, but it's this idea of passing these stories on. So I think really the last question is, what does the heritage around here, Newton Chambers, Elsecar, what does this heritage mean to you?
Well, Newton Chambers was extremely important, as I said, because they were the biggest employer in this area. And there was quite a lot of other industries, such as Paramore's Foundry in Chapeltown, where they used to make rainwater pipes, gutters, cast iron gutters and downpipes and stuff like that. Up at Charlton Brook Iron Foundry, they made these sewer covers, you know. All that's gone now, but that had a big influence on the area, and all the coal industry, the mines. I mean, the coking plant at Smithy Wood, you know, all gone. That's the heritage of this area, and it's all gone, and nothing replaced it as far as I'm concerned.
I think really actually final question then is, what would you like? How would you like to see it almost replaced? What would you like to see happen around here?
Well, it's become a dormitory of Sheffield now, has Chapeltown. I can remember loads of places around here that were just green fields, and the houses now. So, and they're building even more. So, it's just going to be a dormitory. I can't see any future for it other than that. There's and another addition. There's loads of supermarkets opening. Aldi up the road, and then there's one just 100 yards further up. There's that, because there's that much custom. That's all that's happening in Chapeltown now. A lot of the pubs have shut. Yeah.
It's a real shame, and I think as well, a lot of places almost find new purposes for themselves, don't they? Really then, I think moving forward, is there anything you'd like to see change or happen around here? What would you personally like to see change?
I can't see that it being much different in the future. It's certainly not on the engineering side or any heavy industry like there used to be. It's all gone. I mean, over at Ecclesfield, there's a huge factory expanse there, and as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing in it. You know, they're all gone.
Well, that's been absolutely brilliant talking to you, Bob. Thank you so much. I think really that's it done, unless there's anything. No, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Bob. It's been brilliant chatting to you. Thank you.
Right.